Hi, it's Ocean or Kobi here. Yeah, you'll have to excuse me today. I'm a little sad, a little heartbroken. Um, just grieving an ending. But today I wanted to talk a little bit more about, my story. Because I feel like I don't think you know it yet. I've sung for you, I've spoken about, you know, loads of different things so far and shared parts of myself, but I think it's really important for me to learn to step into my story, but also for you to know me a little bit more, and I mean all of it. As much of it as I can, like, fit in this, because I'm a whole universe, right? As you know, I am a musician, I'm a poet, I'm a dancer, I'm a creative, a multidisciplinary creative. I work a lot with archive. I'm also a spiritualist and a person who is learning a which is Ghanaian spirituality, and very much actively also learning Ifa, which is Yoruba spirituality. I have a practice with my ancestors. I'm on the A spectrum. I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user. I'm trans, non-binary / transgender fluid for sure. Yeah, my pronouns are they, them, he, and they. And yeah, I guess like the journey to becoming the artist and the person that I am today has not been an easy journey. I have achieved so much in my lifetime. I'm so proud of myself. I am so proud of my ability to alchemize the impossible and my pain, my painful situations into freaking miracles. Miracles! I'll tell you that. So if you take nothing else from this, if you relate to anything that I say, and you're still here, please remember that you're a miracle. I say that to myself and I say that to you. You are a miracle. You understand? And we need to hear you. We need to hear your story. We need to see you. We need you here. Yeah? Yeah, like, where to begin? School, I'll start there. Like, I was a really shy child growing up. And part of the reason I really want to share this is because, like, I want to build an intimate, like, space with you all. And I'm also making my debut album, my sophomore album, which is called Coming of Age. And I think I see it as like almost like this beautiful myriad and diary type energy, but also like I grew up loving coming of age films. And I think I always wanted to like live one out. And I think in many ways I have. It's been quite the life. But I also realized that sometimes I think I was sold a dream in many ways. A dream that didn't reflect me. Of white kids in their teenage years and then growing up into their adulthood and into their 20s and finding themselves, and all of their identities reflected that didn't really reflect mine. And I have so many different specific identities that I now want to reflect in music that makes people that relate to my identities feel seen and allows me to feel seen too. It's creating my own story, and this album that I'm making is going to be a visual album, so it's a space to feel seen, and there's a whole story to it, you know? Oh, and it's a lot. I'm going to tell you it, I guess. In my story, unfortunately, there is trigger warnings of like sexual assault and emotional abuse and homophobia, transphobia. A lot of trigger warnings here. Mental health, suicidal ideation, all of these kind of things. So take care of yourself. If you need to like take breaks, or if this isn't the right one for you, that's okay. I'm going to arrive at my fullness, the joys and the highs and the lows. So growing up in school, I was shy as hell, like shy, the shyest. And I think it's probably because like I grew up in Ghana for the first year of my life. And the first year of my life I was taken to Ghana. I was born in London and was taken to Ghana and then came back because didn't work out with like our schooling and like extended family and things. So yeah, was brought back. But I think that bring back in that time, if you study psychology, you'll know like attachment theory, I think I just was like, it became really, really shy. And so school was not great. From like reception to like sixth form, let's be real, the bullying was relentless. I think people just didn't understand why I was so shy, and I got teased a lot for it, and it really took me a while to find my voice. It was hard growing up. I just didn't have friends for the longest time, and if I tried to like try and fit in, people would genuinely like get up and leave me behind because they'd had enough. And I think I'm really looking back now, I was like an autistic kid with ADHD who's probably selectively mute, and there was no language for that at the time. And so school was like awful, but we were raised by very academic, encouraging parents, so the grades still showed up. So let me tell you, through uni, uni of course, but like through primary school to secondary school, like kind of sixth form, the grades showed up. And home wasn't the most ideal space. I'll hold it for being a space where like my parents were so good at like making sure our Ghanaian heritage, because I'm Ghanaian, my heritage is Ghana, and my heritage is Ghanaian heritage, so my parents were so good at like making sure that we can speak the language. So I can speak 2 languages. My tree is, I think it's quite good. And like grew up on Anansa stories, and my dad was of the old religion, and so I'd learn a lot about Anansa and like my dad's side of the family, some of them like being part of the old religion. And that was a really special thing, and Ghana was very alive in my parents' mouths, and so it was very present in me, and I have a really strong connection to my Ghanaian heritage for that reason. That plays a huge role down the line, where it taps into like my spirituality, and that's that kind of like desire now to like that I'm learning Ghanaian indigenous spirituality and Ifa and reviving, and have such a strong relationship with my ancestors. I'm so grateful for that. But home was not the greatest. Emotional abuse was very much the undercurrent, and got louder and louder as I reached my teenage years, and so things were not hidden under the carpet and were told to me in ways that I don't think as a kid I should have been hearing. It's tricky. And I think like I was always a creative kid, and so were the rest of my siblings, and like we weren't really encouraged. We weren't encouraged to like take up the things that made us full of joy. I remember wanting to sing all my life, and that was the thing that would get me up. That was the thing that would like get me up. Even when I was shy, I'd do like year 6 competitions, Pandaren Got Talent. So many different things where that would get me up and get me singing, speaking in many ways. But I was never able to go to the after school clubs. I wasn't able to take it for I wasn't able to take it for GCSE. I wasn't able to take music or drama or all of the things that I loved, because either, I've spoken about this before, but like I was working class. Grew up working class, but also it was always told that it was a side project. So with those undercurrents, like not feeling safe in school, not feeling safe necessarily always at home, and not feeling like I had a real outlet to really blossom the creativity that I knew was my soul. It was rough. It was rough. By age 14, well, by year 8, that's when I started to realise I was queer. But it's also when my OCD, the onset of my OCD kicked the fuck in. And my mind became a war zone in many ways. Yeah. So I've had like every kind of like phase of OCD, and it's really important to talk about it because I know I'm not alone. Well, when I was 14, that's when my chronic illness kicked in. And as you know, I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user. And it's sad and it's hard, but I've gradually watched myself deteriorate over the years because the NHS failed me because of medical negligence and medical racism. And I've just watched myself over the years. I have a really deep, strong feeling because of like certain scans and things that have like deeply implied and shown that I have endometriosis, and just how my symptoms manifest, where I get really horrifyingly painful periods. Worst one was in 2023, where I just didn't bounce back after a flare-up during my period, and that's when I lost a lot of my mobility, and now I am a wheelchair user. But I guess over the years I've just like been shouting into the void and not had any kind of like response back and any validation back, and just all of these like back and forths and like people telling me that there was nothing there. And it's affected my illness has affected my GCSEs. It's affected my A-levels. Well, my GCSEs I was able to still get really good grades, but it was when it came to A-level I had to take a year where I just couldn't go into school. And my grades halved. And while I was living at home, things were obviously really difficult at home. And I witnessed firsthand sexual violence, as in with my own eyes. It's a very strange thing when you almost like, I don't even know whether to call it first-hand or second-hand sexual violence, but witnessing something that you shouldn't. Witnessing something that you, as a kid, are maybe told about, and you have to almost act as a protector of people that maybe you hope will be protecting you. And that has like changed my outlook and like affected just how I navigate the world, because I was only 16. It's affected me since. And I was moving through all of this whilst also trying to just be a teenager. So I didn't get the unis I wanted to get. I didn't get the high grade universities, but I did get Leicester University, and I went to study psychology because I, wanted to do something that still was academic, but still like tapped into like my love of people and my love for like mental health, because it was therapy at a really young age that helped me to cope with my OCD, and also everything that was going on at home, even though I couldn't speak about it completely because I was afraid that things would get worse, and it was not good. So I was just concerned for where I would end up, and if like there'd be social services or things like that involved. So I just kept quiet until everything did finally come out, and we all broke our silence and started speaking about things. But uni was my break. Oh, university was my break. It meant so much. It just was like my shoulders were down. I got to be me for the first time, and I was learning to figure out how to make friends. It was a huge deal. I built my confidence. I trusted that like people would want to have conversations with me if I just was trying to be present, even if I was shy and I just listened. I made so many friends. I made so many black queer friends. This is where I started to blossom as a person and my creativity came to life. I literally nearly quit my psychology degree because that's where I started Unislam. I started performing on stages with my music a cappella, even though I hadn't classically trained as a musician. I would just use my voice. Like, that was like my strongest asset, and I just would sing a cappella on stages. And I started layering my vocals. I started like writing the demos of the songs that you will now probably see on the albums, as well as newer ones that I've written. It was like a breath of fresh air, and I think that's where I just became, that's where the becoming started. And when I did Unislam, a university competition where you compete as a team, and speak your poetry, or you do it in groups and like compete against other universities, we didn't necessarily place for the 2 years I did it, but I fell in love. And poetry became a really safe space because it was just me and the mic, and I didn't need to be classically trained for anything. I just could just get on the mic, speak my words, carve this art form and share it. And I won slam championships, the Some Antic Slam Championship. I was going to all these open mics, and then I started to like place, I got into the Roundhouse Poetry Slam in 2019. 2019 I got into the Roundhouse Poetry Slam, and then I got into the finals. Like, it was kicking off. While still doing this, I still managed to get a first class in my psychology degree. I don't even know how. There was so much happening in the background as well. Like, every single time I would return home, it was tricky. But I stayed. I didn't quit my degree, but I did it both at the same time, really pursuing it. And I made so many friends, and I made like the black queer friends that I made. Like, I remember we had this time where I went to my friend's house and we accidentally matched and wore double denim. And we accidentally matched, wore double denim, and made a photo shoot out of it because of course. And he was super into fashion. And I was also really into like photography and fashion and modeling as well. So I found this modeling casting of this brand, and they were doing an open call. So I put a hashtag being like MA open call in our hashtag, and literally they chose us. They said anyone who has like applied to this open call and we put in our stories, you have been chosen. Tell me why, bro. Tell me why. It turns out that this brand is huge, massive. They're actually called Marquise Imelda, and they want us to walk for their first concept show. Then they want us to walk for London Fashion Week. So I walked London Fashion Week twice. And this was like literally like straight after I'd graduated. This kind of call came through, and then I was doing the concept show I think 3 days before my graduation of psychology, and I just knew then that creativity was meant to be my thing. And then I went on to do the London Fashion Weeks, and I'm really grateful that I had that space to be everything that launchpad everything that I wanted to be, and like develop my singing voice there as well. It was so special. I'm really grateful for Leicester. So when I got back to London and I graduated, I knew that nothing could be the same. I knew what I had found. I knew that creativity, that poetry, that music was the thing that I was meant to do, that drama, that all the things that my younger self did not get to do, dance, all of it. That is what I was meant to be doing. I knew it. So I started to take 0-hour contract jobs and like more work that allowed me to still do the projects that I was developing, because I was starting to get into around like poetry collectives and like BBC Words First. Like the snowball was snowballing. And I was also coming into my queer identity and realizing more and more with all the backdrops of like OCD and all of the things that was happening in the house and my health. Mind you, I was still sick. but I knew who I was meant to be. I knew. And so I started to pursue it. And I started getting more fluid jobs that would allow me to do what I wanted to do. However, there was a problem. Not for me, but for my parents and my kid. Thought it was a waste of time. They didn't agree with my career choices, and they didn't agree with the fact that I was becoming more and more visibly queer, and more coming into who I was, more and more experimenting with my gender and my expression. And so the hell began again, but this time directed towards me. Those 2 years of my life were one of the most awful things I've ever had to experience. I think they just didn't like the person I was becoming. To them it was a problem, and I guess maybe a dangerous thing. Not what our culture had taught. Because I knew that though, like in uni, the whole rhetoric of like it not being part of African culture, I did so much work, and that's where I started to uncover my journey with my ancestors and started digging for the proof of queerness as part of like the Pan-African history. There's so much, I've spoken about it on my channel before, but like so much proof of like queerness pre-colonially up until present day. So I had that knowledge, but it was still horrifying. That's the only way I can describe those 2 years. Relentless, just shouting, arguments, it was not okay for me to be the person I was. It was not okay for me to be the artist, the queer and becoming trans person that I was. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of brainwashing going on in my family home, which meant that there was definitely a lot of brainwashing going on, which meant that everyone turned against me, and I was alone in it a lot. There were pockets of like empathy and moments where I'd find a breath, but it was my friends on the phone with me as I sobbed relentlessly that got me through that time. And my art. And you know what's crazy? I think like I was creating, I was doing BBC Awards first, I was getting to the finals of these programs, I was getting into collectives, like really kind of prestigious collectives and competitions, all whilst this was going on in the background. All whilst. It's wild to me how I was able to be creating, and also that's where I started my activism work, because the anti-LGBT laws were brewing in Ghana, and I was connected with like some queer activists in London that I met through queer events, and I was leading protests. I was leaving my house where I was experiencing all the hell I was experiencing and going outside, leading protests for my queer siblings in Ghana, and coming home to chaos. I'm really proud of myself and how I alchemize my pain and turn it into something that can help me to breathe and help others to breathe. It's ridiculous to me. The way in which that time ended was because I had gone into a program where I was being published for the first time in my poetry. I'd gotten into an archive program where I was telling the stories of black enslaved people, black and brown enslaved people in London, and telling their stories, because often their stories weren't told, and there was just the only proof of them was like this like newspaper articles calling for their auction. And so I got into this program because of my archival and like ancestral work that I was also like putting in my poetry about like queer ancestry. And I was being, like, I was working on this publication, my first publication, and it was then that through the roundhouse, like, someone called me up from a well-being team, and I spoke. I told the truth about what was going on, what was happening for me, how I was coming into my queerness and gender bending in live time, and how everything was going up in flames for me. And then they referred me to a homeless charity. I got a caseworker who helped me to move out into a safe house for queer people, I believe, like queer POC people that were experiencing and had experienced emotional abuse, and it was there. That's how I escaped. Whew, what a journey. But it didn't stop there. Hello. This has been part 1 of my story. What kind of brought me up into this point, why I do what I do, and yeah, I hope it's been connecting with you so far. Thank you for listening, and part 2 will be out really soon. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and turn your notifications on so you can get the updates of when I share my next videos and work and story and sharings and musings with you all. My name is Ocean, or Kobi Ayensuo, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you for being here.